right. Welcome to the first ever Produce Your Life panel discussion. Give yourselves a hand for being here. All right, so I'm gonna start off with the first question. I'm gonna give it to Unique. The question is, how does art provide a space for the expression of marginalized identities and experiences, and what role does it play in creating a more inclusive society?
Awesome. So I really loved this question, especially when we started diving into a conversation around it. I want to say one of the things that I have begun to understand and also know as a Native woman, I'm from the Navajo Nation, I'm Diné, and so came from a really small town, moved into Phoenix, and the power dynamic, right? A lot of the struggle as Indigenous people, as Native people, has been the power dynamic that exists on top of us, because in order for us to speak our language, have our culture, live a way of life, we were not allowed to do that when colonialism hit, right? And everything changed. It's this power dynamic that I recognize internationally, because you have the dynamics of white supremacy, the dynamics of the patriarchy, the dynamics of cultural appropriation, things along those lines support these systems on an international level. And this is why colonialism is a big problem, and it's rooted in capitalism. And so when you think about those systems, and especially like being Native, I understand that like even on this land that we're on, what we're doing here, and the land that used to be the land, or I would say still is, of the Atam and the Pipash. And so really fully recognizing the history of how the land speaks to us and why we move all over it, why we come into different spaces and be a part of different spaces, is because we're trying to acknowledge our place in it, but also the people that existed there prior. And so the acknowledgement of the land is a big thing, but it's not only that, it's also how do you begin to empower people so that they have place and they can reclaim their spaces. And so I really feel that the mechanism that helps do that is creative drivers and art, because almost all change on a worldly level has always been led by an art movement. And so you think about that, right? You think about the experimentation, the play, the skill sets that are involved in that. And so that's what I practice as an Indigenous woman who's an artist, who's a designer, who's a creative advocate. I try and intersect those ideas and play with them with people who are also doing the same work. So collaboration is my biggest empowerment, because I'm able to distribute that power and not fight over it, just distribute it.
Awesome. Can you, y'all can clap too if you want to. Now, we were having a conversation and you displayed like the difference between cooperation and collaboration. Could you just... Yeah.
So the way that I explain this, and sometimes cooperation gets masked as collaboration. The U.S. government, for example, the reason why Navajos no longer they call themselves Diné, but Diné is what we normally call ourselves. But Navajo was something that was given to us by our oppressors. And so when you think about those things like cooperation and collaboration, in order for the Navajo to exist on this land, we had to sign a treaty and give away our resources, give away things, our culture, our language, in order to belong. But in that way, it was masked as a collaborative effort. In order for all of us to coexist, that was the collaboration piece. For me, I see that as cooperation. And so when you have entities or large organizations that focus on getting creatives or getting people involved in their organizations to assert their missions, that's a cooperation, right? Because they have a singular mission and they're hiring you to implement that mission. Whereas collaboration is about our shared missions and our shared goals And what do we want to achieve by working together? And sometimes it's temporary, sometimes it's longer, but we allow the space to do what we do best and do it together to create power.
Dope. Yeah, clap it up. And then does anybody else want to chime in on that? You're welcome to.
I do want to say one thing. When you were talking earlier about how the art movements were begun and how these art movements have created all kinds of change, and I wanted to say and add on to that every really impactful and really major art movement was also coming from or starting out of some kind of a struggle. Yep. Which is very interesting that's why the change
Needed to
in
happen.
the art explodes. Yeah. I agree.
Okay, that's a great point. Well, what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna bring it to you, because you guys have a School of Hip Hop, right? Yes. Can you one just tell us about School of Hip Hop, and then kind of speak to the struggle where hip hop came from and how it came to be what it is today?
First of all, what we do is we take the five elements of hip hop culture and we go into community centers and teach kids about their culture. You know, hip hop has always been, like she said, and they both said, it's been out of a struggle. It was created from kids that was struggling and didn't have many resources, didn't have a lot of stuff. And out of this, they created this culture. Just like jazz before them, just be like every form of every American music has come from, that's what hip hop is. It's just all of those genres together. And we take it and make it our own.
Music, I would say.
Yeah, culture.
Explosions like the Harlem Renaissance.
All of that.
All these
Make it hot.
that changed art.
Could you break down the elements,
far away from
Will,
the mic.
when you
Yeah.
can?
So the five elements of hip hop culture we use are DJ, MC, B-boy, B-girl, graffiti artist, and knowledge, or overstanding, what we call it, because knowledge is present in everything and absent from nothing. So we teach these kids how to start their own businesses, what it means to incorporate yourself, how to
Monetize
start a
your art.
nonprofit. Yeah, because a lot of
Monetize your
organizations, they'll have
creative
these kids go out and they'll dance, jive, shuck, and do some hip hop for us, but they don't teach them how to monetize it. Like,
I'm doing a talent show and it's like always free.
Yeah.
They always sell themselves short, even though they're majorly talented and should be treating themselves as such.
yeah, but also teach them the value of work ethic. Like, success only comes before work in the dictionary. One of my favorite sayings. Because you got to put in the work, no matter, you can have a dream, and all those expectations, but how to build, what most people are coming to consciousness now of what it means to be woke. That's like a common thing. But it just means to have knowledge of yourself and know who you are. You know what I mean? That's all it really means. And that's
And know
what we
your
teach
worth.
these kids.
Be authentic to yourself.
Exactly. Know who you are first before you say to the world, this is who I am. Because how can you identify who you are if you don't know, to other people if you don't know who you are?
Right.
So, it's all getting back to that indigenous, because all of this music comes from one source.
Right.
And we know that, and that's what we teach these kids, back to the roots of Africa, the culture. All of this stuff came with us. It's been with us all around the world and the globe. The indigenous people, we've had this for millions of years. It's not nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
We just teach these kids where it comes from, the power of it, and how to incorporate themselves with those elements of hip hop. You want to be a DJ? We bring in DJs that are gigging and say, how much you make? We give them realistic expectations. Like, how much you make for a gig? This is what I make. And one example I get at kids in class, I told them, how much does it cost to buy a cow? None of them knew. I said, let's look
Buy
it
a
up. A cow.
Like a cow?
Moo
A cow.
Like
yes,
moo.
a cow.
Dairy cow.
And the reason why I said this is because people don't.
We on a tangent.
No.
I like it.
I'm
No,
gonna
I
get a
like
point.
it. I like
The
it.
reason why I said this is because African American people are the number one wearers of leather in the United States. Leather. We don't own one damn cow. We don't own a farm. Nothing. So I'm opening that mind up to what it means to own something, to have ownership. And where you at in this pecking order, because that's all it is. You're a buyer or a seller.
Yeah.
Which one you want to be?
To speak to a part of the question about struggle and about how we had to go to the communities that weren't really offered these kinds of art programs in the schools.
Absolutely.
And when we thought about it, we were, I moved him to Phoenix from Philly. That's what we have to say. We have
okay.
to talk it that way.
All right.
He had to come from Philly. I was like, you have to come from Philly because it's way better for the kids. We're gonna be, like improving. We're gonna get bigger plays. It's gonna be bomb. So we get here and we're like, there's no like hip hop programs. We grew up with hip hop. We were like, well, we could put them in jazz, we could put them in ballet, we could put them in all these different, but we were like, this is what we listen to, and this is probably what our kids is gonna listen to, at least for a little bit, this is like their movement, it's a youth movement. We shifted and let it grow with them, it's a youth thing. So we were like, our kids need to like come into their own, right? We can't be like, listen to this good Ice Cube, you're gonna love it. And that's what they love, is that you have to let them come into their own.
Right.
We just couldn't find programs where they could flourish like that, especially not around where we lived. And we were just like, we got to start one.
Right.
And
So
a
you
lot
saw a
of these
need and
parents
you-
came out of woodworks because they were like, listen, I got 5 kids. You know what I'm saying? What can y'all do for me? The Boys and Girls Club, I'm not doing that one. Not again. I'm going to do this up, But we had to come up with different ways to incorporate the needs of our communities in what we were about to create. Couldn't be something that didn't serve our communities, and we did it in the name of hip hop.
Okay.
Like in the name of the culture of hip hop.
It's dope.
That's how I met Rocky Tirade, actually.
Dope.
He sold me his CD.
Well, since we went there, I want to come over here because, as Q stated, you are one of the
I'll
top
take it.
lyricists,
I'll take
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, you'll take
I was
it.
being humble before, but I'll take it.
So I will come to you with this question. How can music be used to create spaces of dialogue and collaboration between different political factions and ideologies, and what role does it play in fostering empathy and understanding?
Foster empathy and understanding. Because, art imitates life, right? And so naturally people are going to want to, feel and experience. So if you project those same feelings, people are naturally receptive to that messaging. So, and another way that, so what is it, how hip hop is used to bridge the community between, ourselves and like political structures and things of that nature? It could be indirect. It could be, it could be as indirect as like, say, a Kendrick Lamar song, like we gonna be all right. Like we heard that ad nauseum in 2020 during the historic demonstrations and things that are taking place. Going back to how art has been the front and center of like revolutionary movements and things of that nature. It could be on the nose. One thing that I did, because I took a brief hiatus during 2020, 2021 to focus on, this movement that we were manifesting out here during a very historic time. And when I came back, there's a lot of like pent up, like anger and just these things that you compartmentalize because you're just in like that survival like mind state. And so what I did was like take my knowledge that I had and put that into song format, talking directly about things that are related to like the local politics and various things that needed translations from people who had like direct involvement at that time. And even before then, like when Ramses was on Friday Night Flavors, one of the things that shout out to John Blaze, what I would do was John Blaze and I would like record these things called Rocky Tirade at the Podium, a musical editorial, and that was even more on the nose because we're breaking down actual like current events and things of that nature that were taking place on a week by week basis. And people who didn't find this information accessible, who were like intimidated by the monolith that is like politics, found that as a like easy gateway into like understanding politics. So I incorporated that methodology into this latest body of work called Tirade Tuesdays, and just really breaking things down in a more like nuanced form. Everything from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office and how that was weaponized against the Black and brown community, to what was going on with Brittany Griner, and just the tone deafness when it comes to Black people in the LGBTQ community, especially as someone who was literally like held hostage, and the lack of like actual empathy and like calls to action until like enough momentum built up that like it kind of came in, like things of that nature. So like creating, like using hip hop as like as a conduit for like information and things that are pertinent. Like, you know, it's just like hiding medicine inside the dessert. You know, people are gonna find it. You want to trick your kids into getting that medicine one way or another. So
I feel like Tupac did that really well too.
Tupac, yeah. That's such an obvious.
education
I just
was
went right
so
off my head. Yeah. Tupac is an amazing example, and plenty of other artists and stuff like that. I mean, I think even more like thought-provoking people like Open Mike Eagle, for an example, or a Homeboy Sandman, for example. You know, they find ways to talk about things that are like not even just from like the public facing or like just the traditional aspect of politics, but like really in-depth ways of thinking and conversations that we have as Black and brown people in our communities. So, you know, it's a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool. That's good. That's good. Y'all can clap on that. That was good.
Right?
That was real.
I have a quick plug. Can I do this? Are we not? That is the name of Pal's
you
newest
doing
song.
it now.
It's called Medicine. And it's exactly that. It's about that. It's called Medicine. We're just writing it right now. And I'm like, you guys, this is it. It's the medicine. Thank you.
Did y'all have that experience growing up where your mom would like try to put your medicine in something good?
There was like, you gonna take it.
Eat this candy.
Yogurt.
There's method.
Yogurt.
Hey, I think there's children here. Y'all didn't hear that.
Yeah. What medicine?
Right.
I always liked it raw. I'm sorry.
All right. Let me go to this next question. I'm gonna come to Q. Okay, so how does the viewer or the listener's perspective impact their interpretation of art? And what can we do to encourage that multiple perspectives and multiple interpretations when listening to or enjoying a piece of art?
So first of all, the more I listen to my other panelists, the more I realize how unqualified I am to be sitting next to them.
Stop.
That's called imposter
Lies.
syndrome.
No, I'm just listening to brilliance up here, and it's really encouraging.
Yeah.
Interesting that you asked me that question. I don't know if that was planned, but I am, for most of my adult life, an entertainer. I have either written music, represented artists, or been a DJ. And DJ the exact way you think: turntables, mixer, microphone, crowd, alcohol, party. Except, as Brother Rocky pointed out, 2020 changed perspective for most of the world.
Yeah.
And as a person who would just be, you know, in the club on Saturday and then on the radio on Monday giving out Migos tickets or Cardi B tickets or, you know, whatever concert or party was going on, I had to realize that there was so much more that I could be doing because of the different perspectives of my audience. Because we walk into these concerts and we walk into these venues, and be it, you know, 20,000 people at a Phoenix Suns game or 300 people at a nightclub in Scottsdale, people that look, love, pray, and believe different from each other, but in that space collectively enjoying the same things. Except once I turn my faders down, we all splinter back out into all of these different perspectives, all of these different beliefs, and really all these very divisive spaces that stop making sense after you look around in a room full of people that diverse, enjoying each other. You know, when I used to be in that arena, I'm talking about 20,000 people high-fiving, hugging, you know, strangers. But because in that space they had the same desired outcome, they got to kind of perform family for a couple of hours.
True here.
So as we collectively took to the streets to protest something that all of us kind of without hesitation agreed was grotesque and awful, I looked around and saw very refreshingly a bunch of people that didn't look like me or my kids. All just as hurt, just as angry, just as upset as I was, But then, like I said, I go back to the radio station and caller number 8, we got tickets to see whoever. And it started to feel very, very trivial. So, you know, Rocky brought up Ramses, my co-host on Civic Cypher. We went to the station and we're like, hey, is there more that we can do? Like, did we really go out into the streets and march and protest and then really come back in the studio and just play the next hip hop record and pretend what's going on outside isn't happening, as the major news outlets are saying that we're violent, that we're destroying things, that we're rioters. And then we're coming on here after seeing that it's different and not saying anything. And we went to the station and they thought that that was a great idea. And then a week passed. And then a month passed. And still we got, you know, ASAP Rocky ticket. Like, it's just, it began to be the same thing over and over. So finally one day when I wasn't at the radio station, my brother and co-host went to our PD and asked him, hey, remember that idea we told you about where we're gonna, you know, have leaders from the community come up and speak to our audience? And the reason why that was important is because on a hip hop station, a very large percent of the listeners aren't black, but they are sympathetic and empathetic to our plight.
Right.
They are bought into our culture. So the best audience to speak about things that are diverse and that come from spaces that maybe they didn't grow up in is the hip hop listener on our station.
Yeah.
Except after months of kind of having us chase this carrot, our program director told us, you know what? We don't want to do a black show.
In those words?
In those words.
The really interesting thing about that word choice is that he could have said, guys, we don't want to do a political show.
Yeah.
Guys, we don't want to do a divisive show.
Yeah.
We don't want to polarize our audience. We really want this to be a place where everyone feels welcome. And no. He very specifically said, we don't want to do black. And at the time, the only two on-air black people on the radio in Phoenix, Arizona were myself and Ramses Ja. Of all the hip hop music that's played, of all the concerts, all the tickets, all the marches, all the community engagement, it was just us. And even in that space, black was too much.
And I feel like that's because we are considered other.
Yeah.
In the hierarchy of how the world works, we are other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've done a wonderful job of othering us. You know, marginalizing isn't even a good enough word anymore. We have been othered and kind of pressed to the margins, kind of pressed to the side. And I wasn't at the station that day, but Ramses resigned for both of us and then called me like, yeah, we quit.
Yeah.
And yeah, we quit. But I think he knew he could take that liberty because, you know, some of you know me.
Right.
You know, some of you have taken me into your homes when I didn't have a place to stay.
Yeah.
Some of you have held my children, the first person in the world to hold my children.
Yeah.
I couldn't go to my son after this man told me he didn't want black and be his proud father.
Right.
So yes, we quit. But in that instance, I went from entertainer to activist.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that was about to happen.
Now talk about it though, just a little bit, because I remember CNN happened.
So, that initial conversation was with tears. When Ramses called me, our careers in radio were over. And they were over simply because we thought, you know, going back to your question, how do we get these messages where it's not a monolith, where it's not an echo chamber, where we're not just talking to people who look, love, think, and believe like we do. Talk to the people who are listening to this station. Because even though they're from all these different spaces, hip hop, art was the uniter. So we felt like if we were gonna get some allyship, if we were gonna get some collaboration, that it would be in this space.
Right.
And they told us no, and then we burned the station down.
Yeah.
You guys,
That's it.
I'll say this because it's been said. We used to work at a station called 101.1 The Beat. You guys may have noticed there is no longer a 101.1 The Beat.
Yeah.
Because every time you Googled that,
Right.
you had to read 1,000 stories about the PD at the hip hop station who said he didn't want to do a show with black people
Yeah.
During that time.
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
the wake of a mass movement
Yeah.
after George Floyd's murder.
That says something too, because one of the things that we had noticed is the immediate response from corporate America in terms of like these performative actions, these disingenuous actions, like black squares, and
Yes.
you know, like the Pepsi commercial where one of the Jenners is like walking through the crowd and hands a Coke can to the cop. It's
Poor
like
baby.
you couldn't even show up for your own need for like capital gain because you are so turned away from blackness and had such a negative reaction to black people advocating for their own like autonomy and livelihoods and pushing against systemic prejudice. Like, you would rather turn away your money than, you know, reinforce or like uplift a community who you bought into, who is financing your family, you're sending your kids to college, etc. Like, that says a lot about the inherent nature of like systemic racism and how we are impacted within our own culture, within our own, you know, business ventures that are inside our culture. So
No, it's one of the easiest times
insane.
in history to perform allyship.
Right.
Was then, right? And trust me, we've had these conversations with the Fortune 500 and all these companies who want to buy into what we're doing because it's good PR. It was the best time to put your fist up and put your black square on Instagram and act like you cared was then, right? So we quit radio, and because of the way we did it, we never work in radio again, so we thought.
Right. Talk about it.
Except
Yeah.
the letter that Ramses wrote to that station was published 5,000 times on the internet. And programming directors and creative managers and buyers and people from all over the entertainment industry reached out to us. So from one station in Phoenix, Arizona, to at the end of next month, 75 stations around the United States. We get to have that conversation on behalf of our people. And because of that massive platform that exists now, you know, in the name of Jesus, because man, we didn't see that coming. I was the in-arena DJ for the Phoenix Suns at the time. So in the city of Phoenix, I couldn't have a bigger platform for myself. So it wasn't, let me get this show so I can be a big deal. I would have produced the show for free, provided the platform for free, and let some other talent do it. Like, this was not a play for myself. So when it happened the way that it did, of course it was really, really sad. But as a result of this, one of our listeners reached out to us a few months ago after a very, very famous rapper and a very, very famous, I don't really know what to call her, Candace Owen. I don't know what to call her, but her and a very famous rapper wore this T-shirt, and that T-shirt in bold black letters said, "White Lives Matter." Now, just like Black Lives Matter as a statement should not be controversial, White Lives Matter shouldn't either.
Right.
Except those words were never spoken. And neither were Blue Lives Matter, and neither were All Lives Matter until we platformed Black Lives Matter to reaffirm ourselves as our houses were burning down.
Yeah.
Just give us some water and help us put our fire out.
Yeah.
And in the midst of that, everyone else had to then matter too. So the White Lives Matter T-shirt worn by those two in particular was triggering. You know, this has been deemed hate speech because we knew that it was not to reaffirm the value of white life, but to oppose the idea that black lives had any worth at all.
Right.
One of our listeners in the wake of that kind of story, if you will, reached out to us and thought that better stewards of the trademark for White Lives Matter would be the host of Civic Cypher. So now, myself and Ramses Ja own and house the trademark for any commercial use for the term White Lives Matter, and have partnered with the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. to house into perpetuity that trademark so that it's never used as a way to tear down our people or any other marginalized people, you know, for commercial profit.
Yes,
That
it's called
is-
hacking
that
the
is amazing.
system
Yeah.
that's at play.
Oh.
It's turning it around on itself.
So
I thought I heard he say he didn't deserve to be up here.
Right. That was amazing. That is still amazing.
That, you know, 90 interviews later in every news outlet in the Western Hemisphere and several throughout the world, that platform has provided something different now. And soon enough, I'll be able to have this conversation with you guys about the things that are coming because of that moment. But, you know, grateful that when the director of the Smithsonian called me, as you can imagine, I was a bit caught off guard. Grateful that she didn't really want to talk about the trademark. She wanted to talk about us. She wanted to talk about our people. She wanted to talk about why Civic Cypher happened. And the museum now working to carve out a space for us based on the things that we did and not the acquisition of a trademark is the part that's most refreshing, because all we wanted to do in the first place was have a conversation.
Yeah. That's amazing. Let's give it up one more time for all of that.
I had a question, George. A lot of questions for you, but do you knowing that happened, right? Are you satisfied that? Because what if they would have gave you what you wanted?
Yes, sir.
I mean, if they would have just gave you what you wanted from the jump street, and then you didn't know their true intentions, how do you feel about that?
You know, the interesting part to the question, he's asking me, am I happy that it didn't work out the way I wanted it to?
Right.
And the answer is absolutely, because the show that we were producing was going to be on at like 4 o'clock in the morning for 30 minutes. It was going to be like a public service message, essentially. Like some radio stations, because the FCC requires it, run something that says, don't drink and drive. So you're driving home from the club, a commercial comes on, in the middle of your music, it cuts off, they run a 15-minute spot with some type of community engagement. Don't drink and drive, get back, like something like that. So getting what we want would have meant that. In the middle of the night on the weekend, you know, a community service kind of evergreen. It would have ran the same thing kind of every week, and then sometimes we'd be able to have leaders like yourselves come on and say something. It would have been like a black square on Instagram. It would have been insulting, but they could have said they did something. That's why, to your point, it's so strange that they didn't.
Right.
It was free airspace.
Right.
There's no commercials running at that hour because nobody would pay for that. Like, for what? Nobody's listening.
It was
So they,
free your conscience.
yeah.
And you
And
didn't
now y'all
take
know
that.
why I tell them kids about cows, because ownership. Think about it. He owned that trademark, and look at the power it gave him.
Right.
That ain't God working, bro. I don't know what
Amen.
it is.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, 'cause that
Definitely.
man wanted something. He wanted peanuts. He said, "I just want a little bit, master. You know, gotta get a little piece." You know what I mean? And they told him no. But that's what we teach these kids. That's the importance of the community. And I'm telling y'all, this is the only way we're gonna get.
We have to teach the kids to go around their oppressor, another route.
Go
Right.
through them if you need to sometimes.
Yeah.
Just saying.
But if you see an obstacle in the way,
Something too that you guys are saying that I just keep picking up, and it's just a theme that's being shared, is when you understand and you get an appreciation for the art and understanding how that builds you together, and there's no stopping it in any form, right? If you come at me and you're trying to prevent me from excelling, but because I'm in tune, because I am being authentically myself, which I think art helps you to do,
Yeah, absolutely.
you can't stop my space. And then, as you mentioned just a moment ago, God's able to use that and manifest something so much better. It's like, oh, you hung in there. That's all I needed. That's your ticket. That was your ticket to something so much greater than what you even thought. So where your mind went, it was, you're still in the weeds. You don't understand the plan that I have for you. But using your obstacles, using the adversity, I'm able to equip you for what I really have in store for you. And that's really encouraging, hearing that and being part of that, and even through the journey that we're going through right now. It is not over.
It takes
It hasn't
faith.
stopped.
It takes faith.
That's
so
interesting.
so
Can I jump on that real quick, about showing up and, you know, being prepared to go down different paths and things of that nature, and hopefully people who are watching this and feel the urgency to do a certain type of work, but are afraid of like imposter syndrome or some of that nature, something of that nature. Like, the only reason I'm even on this panel today is because me as an MC, I decided to with all the hardship and stuff that I had experienced, I showed up as an MC. And by the end of a specific day on May 27th, 2020, I was an organizer. And I never thought that showing up with the intention to, say, be a medic and assist and things of that nature would lead to utilizing my expertise as an MC, as a master of ceremony, to help unify and uniform like these body of protesters and whatnot to make sure people are safe. I never knew that would lead to educating people, educating voters, or converting people into voters, and going down just this path of like pseudo like involvement to actually being a politico and being effective in this community. And literally the entirety of like the past year and a half or so of me being involved in politics and social justice advocacy is because I showed up as an MC, having prepared my entire life to be a musician and travel the world, and God pulled me in a different direction. So what you said really resonated with me right now. And if anybody who's watching or listening to this feels the same, know that you're not the only one.
It's blind faith.
Embrace that through that blind faith.
It's blind faith.
You want to speak on that, my sister?
Well, I can speak on it just because I feel like I've done that my whole career. I mean, I started off, I was 19 years old when I had my daughter in college. I had no idea. I had somebody come into my life, tell me I have a teller position at a bank. Literally started as a teller, 19-year-old mom, didn't know what I was doing. But you feel things, and I started noticing that I wanted to try something different. So I jumped. I probably have had blind faith and jumped the majority of my career, and that's where I've gotten to where I am at now. But sometimes you just have to take those struggles, those things that you're coming around, that's all building you up for the bigger purpose and where you're going. But also having the education and the people around you and being open to that, I think is really huge. And I think it all comes back to having faith and being comfortable with it. You guys said that about being comfortable with who you are and knowing who you are and having that foundation so that you can take those leaps of faith and those blind faiths to get you to where you're going. And trusting the process and the unknown. I was in a career as a commercial lender for 15 years, comfortable. I was good. All of a sudden, someone comes up to me, "Hey, Ashley, we created a new position at this new bank, a new line of business, never been around." I was just like, that's scary.
Yeah,
Going to
right,
a bank,
right.
that position goes, I mean, that's it. And I got a family, husband.
Oh.
My bad.
Sorry, husband.
All those things. But there was something like an inkling in me, just like, you know what, I'm going to take it, because it was talking about helping underserved communities, minority-owned women, minority-owned businesses, women in general. And I leapt. I just took a leap. And that's that blind faith, because I think everything else that I went through, all the traumas that I went through, imposter syndrome. I was scared to wear my hair curly for years because someone told me I didn't look professional. So I've had all these different things that I went through that almost broke me, but has built me up to be able to now be in the position I am now, to give back the education and an understanding, and not from a point of just telling someone, but no, I've lived those experiences and I've made it. So I think it's just important sometimes to take that leap of faith, understand the traumas and the experiences, good, bad, or indifferent. They make you who you are, and it helps you to look inward to become a better person. And then that way you feel comfortable to move forward in doing those things. So that was just a little bit.
Amazing.
I just want to add one
Let me get, because I got a question that I got to get to Joe. So Joe, I wanted to ask you this question, being that you are the youth director at Pilgrim Rest. How can we use art, music, film, media to promote interfaith dialogue and encourage understanding, empathy, and respect across different religious or spiritual traditions?
I think we just saw an example of this up here, right? By using artistry, whatever that platform is, whether it be music, whether it be media, whether it be preaching, storytelling, it humanizes the subject at hand. And then what happens when you're able to relate to something? Where you're able to see, like when you mentioned hip hop and you talk about the significance of hip hop, I know where I'm from, that would be big. But then now I have this artistry that I'm actually going to take care of because I understand where it came from. I understand the history. I understand the power in it. So when I look at this from a standpoint of a pastor or a youth director, I look at it in this sense to where it helps me to relate, to not just sit there and look at a culture and be judgy, right? Like historically, there's been a lot of judgy situations that's going on here. But through artistry, it gets rid of that. You know, someone, one time, I'll give an example. One time I freaked out because the police were coming by and I got scared. And my cousins and everybody was looking at me like, why are you scared? And I was like, man, look, I don't mess with the police. For years, no one understood why. And then one day I explained to them, I was helping my cousin move in this place. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. So I'm helping my cousin move into his house. And I was a single dad at the time. My daughter was about 2 years old. And I helped him move in. I'm walking over to the car. When I'm walking over to the car, I see a car, kind of no lights on, pulling down the road. And I look over, and my cousin and I, we both think we kind of street smart, you know, so we backed up like we're going to go back into the house. So it looked like the car was starting to pull into one of the houses. So we said, okay, let's walk across the street now. And I said, hey man, I dapped it up, or gave him a hug, walked over to the car, started to open the door, and next thing you know, without any lights or anything, the car just takes off. You just hear the wheel squiddling on the ground, and it pulls up, and maybe about 6 inches from me, it stops. And then now the lights are on, and they're like, get on the hood, get on the hood, get on the hood. And then they're pushing us down, they're handcuffing us, they're threatening us, they're asking us our name, our personal information. We see neighbors are starting to come outside. And all I can think in that moment is, I need to get to my daughter. I'm all she got. It's just me and her. And without me, what happens to her? That's where my mind was. My cousin, I want your badge numbers, I want this, I want that. And I appreciate where he was coming from, but I looked at him and I said, cousin, I need to get home. We can take care of this.
Right.
I need to get home. And when folks were able to understand why I get triggered now, then they're able to say, oh, I get it. And then that opened up doors for even other cultures, because my grandfather, he's a white gentleman, for him to step back, because at one point, he's a preacher, he said, there is no racism in America. And then I was able to share that story with him. And then he just sat back and said, wow, you know, I never would have thought. I couldn't understand. So some of y'all might be wondering, what does that have to do with art, right? What does that have to do? But that's the art of storytelling as well. I'm able to bring you to that place of where I was, almost to the point of you feeling the same feeling that I was in that moment. And now you can relate. So that the judginess moves away. If I'm really trying to talk to somebody about how awesome God is, but I don't understand anything about you, I haven't taken the time to consider your experiences, then the God that wants to use me, because our God is creative, right? I looked up in the sky the other day. Arizona has the best sky. I don't know about y'all, but I look up and I'm like, man, this is beautiful. I'm from Detroit, it's clouds all the time. I'm looking up like, man, this is crazy. I don't even know the colors, right? I don't even know the color spectrum or anything like that. But then I also look at our lives as art as well, and how adversity can help us to turn into what God created us to be. He's the potter, and we are his clay. And if we are going to submit to the design that he created for us, his ultimate will for us, we may have to go through some things. And art, and you just mentioned earlier today while we were talking in the back, that you challenge your artists. You say, this is what we're doing, and you say, I purposely will challenge you. And I guarantee that challenge has edified that particular artist. Now they're better because of their experience with you. That's what art, that's what media, that's what the creatives can do.
It's building their resources, their tools, giving them all the external weapons that they will need to fight this powerful system that keeps them down.
You have to be diversified with all of that. Even with business, you have to think outside the box and think about the abnorms. And that's a form of art too, is creating. Exactly. It's all about creating it and stepping outside of your comfort zone and being not afraid to take challenges or chances, you know?
So I'm glad you brought business in, because I got a question for you. All right.
Okay.
And I know you're going, because there was a consultation we were in, and you were like, Darren, that's your intellectual property. Don't be giving them your intellectual property.
Yes.
So here's my question. So what are some common challenges associated with managing and protecting intellectual property in a business context?
The first thing is just not getting trademarked or getting all the proper, documents in order. People, there's a big thing. I think there's a difference. Like you think about franchising. People are like, oh, I want a franchise, but they never talk about like licensing and trademarking. I call that mailbox money. If you have an opportunity to do that, if it's you're selling a print, you're selling a logo, it doesn't matter. If you trademark and you can get someone else to purchase that and use it in somewhere else, you get money for your trademark and you get money for royalties on that. That's mailbox money. It's missed opportunities for so many businesses, but it's also a lack of education on that. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so it's just educating on that and talking about that. But that is a huge part of business that you could do. And if you're in business, you should be trademarking your business name. You should be trademarking your logo. If you come up with a docu-series or a panel discussion, it should be trademarked looking at those things.
Yeah, it's trademark.
I had to throw that in there.
I got you. I'm listening.
Trademark, and also trademark doesn't mean just like a Nike or something like that. It's also a name.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have to do them separate. They don't come together.
No, they don't come together. But that's just in an overall synopsis of it. And you should be talking to an attorney. I'm not an attorney. That's not my forte. But there are opportunities for that, and you should not leave those things on the table.
All right, so I got a follow-up question. All right. That being said, okay. How can we foster a more collaborative and inclusive approach to intellectual property? One that recognizes the value of shared knowledge, diversity of perspectives, and the common good.
It's easy. Say, for instance, I'll just use this programming, for example. You're bringing all these different people talking about all these different perspectives, right? And you want to bring that to other cities, but maybe you're not able to get to those other cities. You could collaborate with another organization in Michigan, for instance, and then bring the same panel and this same type of platform to that. And then you're collaborating, you're working, you can help, you're giving them models, you're getting them how to do it. It's very easy to do that, and it's expanding your brand and your mission behind it in one whole scoop of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like you directly talking to me though. Man.
It's literally collaboration. It's understanding the difference between collaboration and cooperation.
Yeah.
Because when you start collaborating with people, your ideas are all at the table.
Yeah.
And you're able to creatively turn them into something that amplifies even greater than if one person was doing it.
That is the biggest downfall in business, is people not collaborating and being intimidated or feeling like competition. If people would just take their egos and put it to the side.
Yeah.
What egos?
There's so much more room for growth. And when you do collaboration, there's more revenue, there's more exposure. It's just such a bigger opportunity for businesses and to support one another and to also get missions and understanding of what you're talking about on a bigger scale. And that's a big miss. And you can do that and also make money. And I think people get afraid of, well, I'm gonna do this for free because I don't want to do. No, no.
Yeah.
People need to value you and what you have. You sat down, if someone created a logo, it took time. It's a great logo. It has a great mission. It has a great meaning. Just because you want to maybe sell it off, or you want to license it, or you want to do, that doesn't mean you need to do that for free. It doesn't take away from who you are. Because if you are doing stuff for free and not getting money and getting paid for stuff, then you're going to go away. And then you're not going to be able to do anything. So it's valuing.
Discourages you along the way, along your journey.
Yeah.
Great
It's always
book by
not rewarding or not moving forward.
Yeah.
a gentleman by Dr. Claude Anderson. You guys know. Any of you know who this is?
How?
Okay. So he wrote a book called Powernomics. And it's a great starting point for this conversation about economics, the power of economics. and how these great examples of certain cultures, how they got themselves out of economic oppression, by coming together, like we're talking about. Because every, community, they use their political power as a group, they use their money as by a group, they use their police by a group, they use their government by group, everything by group. And this book is a great segue to answer some of those questions that we may have. It's a phenomenal book, Powernomics, Dr. Claude Anderson. Great book.
And that's one of the main things we talk to the School of Hip Hop kids about. Like in 5th grade and 4th grade, who is teaching these kids about intellectual property? Who's telling these kids how to monetize their creative art and their creative lifestyle and what they like to do as a hobby? I say as a quote, because we don't have hobbies. What they enjoy doing and monetizing that, And I know some School of Hip Hop kids in here right now. I can see y'all. Y'all know what intellectual property is, right? Yep. They know. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Where we at on time, Anna? 5 minutes? Okay, I did want to open up the floor to questions from the panel, or from the audience to the panel. Does anybody have any question for anybody on the panel? Brother Kawan, my cousin Kawan right there.
Hey, first of all, I really appreciate you guys all coming together. I think that's awesome. We definitely need more of that in our community. It means a lot to me to be here to witness this. Couple things. You guys talked about collaboration. And I thought about how, remember we used to go to school lunch.
Yeah.
And the best functioning kitchen was when everybody put something separate on the tray. And they kept it moving.
Yeah.
And that's what I look at collaboration, is everybody put something on the tray, something we can all eat, flourish. And then second of all, I wanted to get your guys' opinion on ageism in music, specifically hip hop, right? For some reason, hip hop artists have a short life expectancy in the game, right? And it's our only genre of music where we're also pitted against each other, right? You don't have the Rolling Stones going against the Beatles. They're not doing a battle. There's no beef, but you know what I mean? But as you grow older, like, we've been doing music for years, right?
Yeah.
I look at myself as I want to continue to do music like Earth, Wind, and Fire. All those individuals who are still able to put out music, but I just want to maybe get you guys' opinion on why is there such ageism in music, specifically hip hop?
I get that too.
I think because hip hop is such a, it was a huge issue before, obviously, right? But now I think that the answer is because like this hip hop as an art form is young specific, like we're 50 years. We're celebrating our 50-year anniversary like on the agreed upon inception of hip hop. And before then, when you had some of our the Mount Rushmore artists and things of that nature, your Jays, your Nas, your Rakims and stuff like that, hip hop was in its infancy. So I think there is hip hop is always going to be inherently tied to youth, to black youth and things of that nature. But there really wasn't an opportunity or an avenue for older MCs, to watch people age with grace and find their way as artists and things of that nature. But over this past generation, you're seeing artists find their way, not only age with grace, your Pharoah Monches and your Erykah Badu's and these people who are breaking that 50-year barrier themselves, but now you're seeing people break into music in their 30s, in their late 20s and things of that nature. Think of Griselda Records, those are all older millennials and Gen Xers and things of that nature. Think of when 2 Chainz found his stride. He was in his 30s. Think of when going back to speaking about Jay's generation and things of that nature. He got on, so to say, at 28. We can use Eminem, for example, white rapper, but nonetheless, he got on in his late 20s. I think as hip hop continues to evolve and as a culture that's aging, we'll have more subgenres and people from different generations, provide art form. It's relatable to people from different generations and things of that nature. So
we're all the agitators of that. We're the disruptors of that right now, and you are too, sir. All of our youth are getting this knowledge and information from us and paying it forward, and they're probably going to have picked something up, hopefully, and then share that with the generation after them. And what we have to start doing is looking at hip hop as in the same way that our predecessors looked at other genres of music throughout history.
Right.
We have to start looking at hip hop as classical music.
Yeah.
It's now a classical form of music.
It is.
A classical art form, and we treat that as we treat jazz, or as we treat gospel, or doo-wop, or what have you. These artists, and I just speak from my family's, history and in that industry, that it is ongoing. And we will, disrupt that cycle of ageism that they had when they had doo-wop, and they had that when they had jazz.
But we also got to big up
21.
some of the artists that are, look at you got people out there like LL Cool J. There's some artists that are still able to tour, and there's a lot of different reasons why. I mean, we won't have enough time to go into.
Did y'all hear about this 50-year anniversary tour they doing?
Yeah, they doing it. So there's some artists that are still relevant, and like Rocky said, hip hop is only 50 years old. It's in its infancy stage. It's still just hitting. I think it's like an iceberg. The last 50 years is just the tip of what we're showing. I think what's down underneath is the most, what we're going to get into the real of what's coming in this culture.
Can I say something real quick?
Kendrick Lamar is going away no time soon. The dude can continue.
I think with the advent of streaming and like your DSPs and things of that nature, there's just different avenues for people to go for different types of music. So it's not like we're just subjected to what major record labels are, inundating, the populace with. People can live and exist as successful artists regardless of their age. I mean, me, for example, I'm in my mid-30s. I turned 37 on Thursday. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not intimidated by this age barrier or whatnot, because I'm a better MC, I'm a more successful MC than I was 10 years ago, and I don't adhere to ageism, and I think that we're going to continue to smash that barrier and create a less homogenous environment when it comes to people of specific generations and things of that nature. So
Can I just share something from a different angle, or if we don't have time?
No, I was given the okay by the director, so.
It's from a slightly different angle. One thing I did, I don't know about you guys, but I got into oldies. Oldies to me is like Earth, Wind & Fire, some of that genre. And what happened was my dad would play it on Saturday. I had no choice but to listen to whatever my dad wanted to play while we cleaned up the house, right? And as I grew up, now I'm listening to classical music, like what we consider classical music. I'm listening to funk. I'm listening to old school, like old school rap, and then I also had Jay-Z and those guys, and that was part of my genre at the time. So when my daughter, who's now 19, she prefers listening to my era of hip hop because I played that and she heard it. So on Saturdays when we're cleaning up the house, she's hearing the Nas rapping backwards, she's hearing, and she has a different appreciation for the artistry. So I think, as you mentioned, us being disruptors to that particular flow, that particular pattern, I think a lot of that ball is in our park as well. Mm-hmm. We can control that to some degree, make sure they get the history of hip hop, making sure they understand where it comes from. And then my daughter literally will listen to some of these guys saying, she'll like, they're trash. They're just.
Understand what's classic music, what's classical.
She said, take care of it. Yeah. Take care of this art.
All right, so look, we're at our time limit. Man, this was great. This was great. This was amazing. Yeah, we're gonna do another one. We'll do another one.
Way too fast, at the last. A nigga way too blessed to be strapped. When